Overnight, police are investigating now the shocking deaths of legendary director Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle.
Tracy Reiner could barely hold back her tears as she spoke, her voice trembling with disbelief. In her emotional interview with ABC News, she finally broke her silence about the heartbreaking tragedy that struck on December 14, 2025. The day her parents, the legendary director Rob Reiner and his wife, producer Michelle Singer Reiner, lost their lives in a devastating incident at their Brentwood home in Los Angeles. That day didn't just take her parents away, it shattered her world. It was also the day Tracy began revealing painful truths about what really happened inside that house, exposing a story that has left Hollywood speechless. In the haunting interview, Tracy revealed that her younger brother, Nick Reiner, had personally told her the reason behind his shocking actions toward their parents. A private confession that, as Tracy says, still echoes in her mind, like a warning no one wanted to hear. Before diving deeper into this emotional story, if Reiner and Michelle ever touched your heart through their films, share a comment below to honor their legacy and say your final goodbye. According to Tracy's interview with ABC News, the moment that haunts her the most happened in early December 2025, just 1 week before the tragic event. The conversation took place at the guest house behind her parents' home in Brentwood. Sometimes I just come out to gather my sick thoughts. As a teenager, Nick had been temporarily staying there after a period of instability, trying to find his footing again. Tracy recalled that it was Nick who had reached out first, saying he needed to see her urgently and speak alone. That evening, after a quiet family dinner, the two siblings met in the small, dimly lit guest house. The air felt heavy, she said, as if something dark was about to unfold. And in hindsight, she was right. Tracy remembers every second of that night, every word, every glance. Nick didn't start with any apology or small talk. He got straight to it, saying he needed to borrow money and not just a little. He made it clear this wasn't something he could fix in a few days. He was arrested in a public area in the Exposition Park area near the University of Southern California campus. He was approached by the officers and he was arrested without incident. There were no indications that he was going to resist or anything like that. He didn't flee or anything like that. He was taken into custody without an issue and he was transported to our police headquarters facility. It was serious. Tracy said he never mentioned an exact number but kept stressing that he needed the money right now, or as he put it, everything would collapse. When she asked what was really happening, Nick began opening up about the chaos in his life. According to Tracy, he admitted his debts had been piling up for months that he'd tried to manage on his own but just couldn't keep up anymore. He told her he had already reached out to people he used to know, even old friends and industry connections, but nobody wanted to help. As he spoke, Tracy noticed his movements, restless, uneasy, almost desperate. He would sit with his head down, then suddenly stand and pace across the room, only to circle back and sit again like someone trapped inside his own thoughts. Tracy recalled that Nick kept saying he felt cornered, that even his own family had stopped believing in him. He told her, "Everyone thinks I'll always be rescued. But this time, no one's there for me." His tone wasn't loud or angry. It was hollow, full of deep frustration that had clearly been bottled up for a long time. The air in the room felt thick, tense, and suffocating. Then came the part that truly unsettled Tracy, the moment the talk shifted from money to their parents. According to her, Nick spoke about Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner in a cold, detached way, as if they were people who'd controlled every decision for too long. He said he'd waited years for things to change, that something should have been handled long ago, and that his patience was running thin. Throughout their conversation, Tracy noticed Nick's hands repeatedly tightening into fists, then slowly unclenching. His eyes darted around, never settling anywhere for long. He talked fast, almost like he was racing against his own thoughts. And then without warning, he stopped mid-sentence, got up and stared out the window in silence. The room fell still, but the tension in the air said everything. Yesterday at December 14th, about 3:40 in the afternoon, LAPD responded to the residence of a Rob and Michelle Reiner located in West Los Angeles Division. At that location, they found two deceased adults, a male and a female. Through the night, working with the coroner's office, they were able to identify them definitively as Rob and Michelle Reiner. Tracy recalled that the moment everything shifted was when Nick suddenly stood up. His voice dropped and he stepped closer. The air changed instantly. She said she couldn't explain it, but a powerful instinct told her something was wrong. She didn't claim Nick was about to do anything specific. Yet, her gut screamed that she needed to leave right then and there. Just as that feeling hit her, her phone rang, almost like fate stepping in. Tracy answered immediately, pretending it was something urgent. She stood up, grabbed her things, and walked out of the guest house without looking back, not even for a second. Later, she said that as she got into her car, her hands were trembling so hard she could barely hold the wheel. Even when she got home, the anxiety wouldn't fade. It lingered deep inside her like an alarm that wouldn't turn off. Over the next few days, Tracy kept thinking about whether confirmed what had happened. Everything suddenly made sense. Every strange detail from that night, every uneasy moment. Tracy realized that what she thought was just a failed plea for money was actually something far deeper. A warning sign that Nick was in serious distress mentally and emotionally. She said that night wasn't just about finances. It was about years of built-up pressure, bad habits, and emotional struggles that had finally reached a breaking point. We have our robbery-homicide division handling the investigation. They worked throughout the night on this case and were able to take into custody a Rick Reiner, a suspect in this case. He was subsequently booked for murder and is being held on $4 million bail. In her emotional interview, Tracy said, "I don't see someone who changed in just a few months. I saw the same behavior repeating again and again." Her words painted a picture of a long, painful decline, one that had been quietly unfolding for years before everything fell apart. Rick Reiner was born and raised in Los Angeles, the son of Rob Reiner and the grandson of Carl Reiner, one of the most celebrated names in American television history. Tracy said Nick grew up surrounded by comfort and opportunity. But behind that privilege, there were always warning signs he was impulsive, easily triggered, and constantly pushing against boundaries. Nick once admitted in an old interview that as a teen, he often needed to step away and clear his thoughts. But those moments of reflection didn't last long. Tracy explained that he drifted into circles outside the family. People who lived fast and took big risks. He started staying out late, avoiding structure and chasing distractions that numbed his restless mind. According to Tracy, Nick himself once said that his troubles didn't come from a lack of love or money, but from the noise in his own head. He was always trying to find ways to quiet it. But instead of peace, he found chaos. Those early experiments, as Tracy called them, slowly pulled him into a cycle that would haunt the family for years. Nick spent long stretches in treatment facilities across California, sometimes for months at a time. Each visit brought hope that things might finally change. But every time he came home, the pattern returned. Frustration, anger, and resistance to any kind of structure. Tracy said the family tried everything they could. Doctors, therapy, rehab, boundaries, but nothing ever seemed to stick. Each time, Nick would slip back into the same self-destructive rhythm, growing more detached and harder to reach. And now, looking back, Tracy said those were the warning signs that no one truly understood until it was too late. Back in 2016, Nick opened up in an interview with NPR, saying he couldn't stand the idea of being told to slow down or settle. He described himself as a kid who grew up in a Hollywood family, surrounded by fame and expectations. But once he hit rock bottom, none of that mattered anymore. According to Tracy, that same line, "My background doesn't mean anything now," became something the family heard again and again. Proof that Nick wasn't ready to truly change, no matter how hard they all hoped he would. After years of going in and out of treatment, Nick developed another dangerous habit, gambling. Tracy explained that at first it seemed harmless. Small games, casual bets, just fun with friends. But before long, Nick started believing that luck could be his ticket out. That one win could erase every mistake and wipe away years of failure. According to reports from Page 6 and CNN, Nick eventually lost tens of thousands of dollars. Desperate to bounce back, he started borrowing money to recover his losses. Tracy said the family discovered multiple times that Nick had secretly borrowed cash and lied about what it was for. Every time they confronted him, his reaction was explosive, full of anger and frustration, insisting that no one understood what he was going through. Tracy remembered one conversation in particular. Nick had said, "I just need one more chance, one more win, and I'll fix everything." But instead of turning things around, each gamble only made his debt grow, dragging him deeper into a mental storm that he couldn't escape. There were short stretches where Nick seemed to find his footing again, especially around 2015 when he worked alongside his father on the film Being Charlie. He even told the press that making the movie was part of his recovery. The film's main character says he just wants to silence the noise in his head, a line that Tracy said felt heartbreakingly close to Nick's own real-life struggle. But that stability didn't last. Each time it seemed like he was improving, something would pull him back into the same destructive cycle, only worse. His requests for money became more frequent, his emotions more intense, and his view of the world darker. Tracy said it was like watching someone fight a battle with invisible enemies, always convinced everyone was against him. Looking back, she described Nick's journey as a vicious loop. Falling, getting pulled up, then falling again, only deeper each time. Gambling, money issues, and emotional outbursts became tangled together until it was impossible to separate one from the other. And through all of it, her parents, Rob and Michelle, tried to help, even when it drained them emotionally, financially, and spiritually. Tracy said that after years of trying, the story stopped being just about Nick's troubles. It became a family struggle, one that weighed heavily on her parents most of all. They were faced with impossible choices. How much help was enough? And when was it too much? For any parent, that's a heartbreaking line to walk. The Reiner family's early 2000s, Rob and Michelle were seeking professional help for their son. Never willing to give up hope. They didn't wait for the situation to fix itself. They fought it head-on, doing everything loving parents could. But behind the scenes, that hope came with exhaustion, fear, and the growing realization that no matter how much love they gave, the storm inside Nick might never calm down. Tracy said her parents went above and beyond, reaching out to psychologists, doctors, and countless support programs across California. They even rearranged their work schedules, putting everything else aside just to make sure Nick's treatment stayed on track. According to Tracy, Rob and Michelle never cared about how it might look to the outside world. Their only focus was keeping their son safe. Family mattered more than image, she said firmly. One powerful story, first mentioned by US Weekly and Page 6, and later confirmed by Tracy, involved Alana Zabel, a yoga instructor who worked closely with the Rares in the early 2000s. During one session held inside their Brentwood home, Nick reportedly had intense emotional outbursts, shouting, pacing, and crying for long stretches. What stood out, according to Alana, wasn't the outburst itself, but how Rob and Michelle handled it. They didn't send Nick away or ask anyone to step in. They stayed right there, face to face with their son, waiting patiently until he calmed down. Tracy said that moment summed up her parents perfectly. Patient, loyal, and determined to face every storm as a family. As Nick got older and entered longer-term treatment programs, Rob and Michelle remained his support system. Through it all, Tracy said there were times when Nick would be away for months, working hard on his recovery. And when he came back home, her parents treated him with nothing but warmth. They'd rearrange the house to make space for him, often letting him stay in the guest house to give him privacy, but still keep him close enough to watch over him. Each time, they hoped it would be the last time they'd have to start over. But the cycle kept repeating. There were moments when Nick refused to go back to treatment, choosing instead to disappear for a while and cut off contact. Even then, Rob and Michelle refused to give up. They'd reach out to his friends, his counselors, anyone who might know where he was, just to make sure he was alive and safe. Tracy said some nights her parents didn't sleep at all. They'd stay up until sunrise waiting for a text or a phone call, praying that their son was okay. The emotional weight of it all was crushing. And to make things worse, even the experts couldn't agree. Some professionals told them to be stricter, to stop enabling Nick. Others said they were being too harsh and should show more compassion. In an interview with NPR, Rob Reiner later admitted that he sometimes listened to the professionals more than to his own instincts as a father, something he came to regret deeply. Michelle also confided to close friends that she had once been convinced Nick was manipulating the family, and that belief only made their home feel even more divided. Still, no matter how bad things got, they never gave up on him. Tracy said her parents' love didn't come with conditions. Even when they tried to set boundaries or take a tougher stance, they never locked the door completely. Rob and Michelle always kept space for Nick to come back, ready to try again, no matter how exhausted they were. According to Tracy, there were entire years when her parents' lives revolved around keeping Nick safe financially, emotionally, and physically. Every decision, every plan, every quiet night was somehow connected to him. What shocked most people on the outside was that all of this happened privately. No press, no public, no statements. Just two parents fighting a quiet, endless battle behind closed doors, hoping love alone would be enough to save their son. To the public eye, Rob Reiner looked like a man in full control, still directing, still smiling on red carpets. And Michelle continued to show up at Hollywood events with her usual grace. But behind the scenes, their reality was completely different. Tracy said that behind those smiles, her parents were trapped in a long, exhausting battle that had no script, no direction, and no happy ending. Looking back, she admitted that her parents' refusal to give up on Nick, as admirable as it was, slowly made everything inside the family more complicated. Love turned into tension, and loyalty became a constant test of patience. According to Tracy, what started as temporary family strain eventually became years of unspoken conflict. By around 2018, things reached a boiling point. Nick's growing financial problems and dependence started pulling everyone else into his chaos. Family gatherings no longer felt warm or welcoming. Every conversation carried tension. Every silence felt heavy. What used to be laughter around the dinner table had turned into uneasy small talk and anxious glances. For Roy Reiner, who lived closest to their parents, the toll was the hardest to watch. Tracy said Roy often saw firsthand how their parents were being drained emotionally and physically by the constant worry. He was there for the late-night calls, the emergencies, the unpredictable moments when Nick would show up in a fragile or unstable state. Over time, Roy began stepping back. Not because he didn't care, but because he was afraid. Afraid that one night things could spin completely out of control. The relationship between Nick and Jake Reiner was different, but just as painful. Tracy described it as cold distance. Two brothers who no longer spoke much. Their connection reduced to awkward nods at family events. According to sources cited by Page 6, Jake's silence toward Nick wasn't anger. It was something heavier. It was disappointment, maybe even heartbreak over someone he couldn't recognize anymore. The quiet between them, Tracy said, was louder than any argument. But the most father supposedly believed in more. Tracy recalled moments when she could sense the jealousy brewing. Whenever family discussions turned to money or support, Nick's energy shifted instantly. If anyone questioned his spending or tried to set boundaries, he would take it personally. And almost every time Tracy became the target of that frustration, and she said that what started as emotional tension soon grew into something deeper. Discussions about family, finances, trust, and inheritance began to surface. Those conversations were never easy, and they often ended in silence rather than resolution. Tracy admitted it broke her heart to see things reach that point. Her parents were torn between wanting to help their son and trying to protect what little peace they had left. And through it all, the family dynamic, once full of warmth and laughter, became a quiet battlefield where love and exhaustion collided over and over again. Close family sources revealed that Nick had long felt unfairly judged when it came to money matters. He believed his parents never trusted him the way they trusted others. Tracy said the family never actually discussed inheritance in detail, but the tension and suspicion had been there for years, building quietly in the background. According to Tracy, Nick's resentment toward his father ran far deeper than finances. It came from growing up in the shadow of someone larger than life, a Hollywood legend. Rob Reiner was respected across the industry. The son of a television icon, admired by peers, and loved by audiences. Tracy said Nick often felt like he could never measure up. That no matter what he did, he'd always be the son of Rob Reiner, never his own person. Over time, that insecurity turned into confrontation, not only with his parents, but with his siblings, too. Tracy explained that by this point, every family disagreement could explode into something much larger. Any discussion about trust, money, or control could instantly become a spark that set everything off. She believes this fragile emotional state led directly into the chaotic chain of events during those final days. When the quiet tension that had been hiding behind closed doors finally burst into the open, when Tracy pieced everything together later, She realized that the night of December 13th, 2025 had been anything but ordinary. Her parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner, attended Conan O'Brien's annual Christmas party, a festive tradition among Hollywood insiders. Nick was there, too, and according to Tracy, something felt wrong from the start. "What I heard later sent a chill through me," she admitted. Reports from CNN, People, and Page 6 revealed that Nick spent much of the night alone, avoiding small talk and barely engaging with anyone. Guests remembered him asking the same question over and over, wanting to know if the people he spoke with were famous. His eyes tense, his focus scattered. Tracy said that description matched exactly how he'd been during their recent private conversation. Distracted, restless, and emotionally unstable. At some point during the night, things reportedly escalated. According to what Tracy later learned, Nick and Rob got into a heated argument. The details were never made public, but several witnesses said the energy in the room shifted instantly. The party fell silent and everyone sensed something was deeply wrong. When Tracy heard about the argument later, she said one thought hit her immediately. Everything had crossed a line. Rob and Michelle left the party together and returned to their Brentwood home that night. No unusual calls came afterward, but by the following afternoon, Sunday, December 14th, 2025, tragedy struck. When Romy Reiner couldn't reach her parents, she drove to their house to check in. Within minutes of entering, she ran out in panic, calling for help. At 3:40 p.m., LAPD officers arrived and discovered what had happened. The medical examiner later ruled both Rob and Michelle's passing as the result of severe injuries, confirming the case as a homicide. When Tracy got the news, she said her mind went blank and then flashes of memory began flooding back. Her last talk with Nick, his strange behavior, his growing instability, everything suddenly made sense and it was unbearable. While officers secured the property, Nick was nowhere to be found. Surveillance footage later showed him at a gas station near the University of Southern California, roughly 15 kilometers from the Brentwood home. Tracy said that when she saw that footage on the news, she barely recognized her brother. He looked lost, paranoid, constantly glancing around as if he thought someone was watching him. Less than an hour later, around 9:15 p.m., police tracked him down and took him into custody, ending a citywide search. Tracy said she didn't feel relief, only deep sorrow. The truth, she said, had become impossible to deny. December 17, 2025, Nick appeared at the Los Angeles Central Courthouse for his first hearing. Prosecutors charged him with 2 major counts involving serious harm to multiple individuals and the use of a dangerous object. The arraignment was scheduled for January 7, 2026. But Nick didn't enter a plea during that initial appearance. For Tracy and her siblings, the heartbreak wasn't just in losing their parents. It was realizing that the person responsible was the same one they'd spent years trying to save. "The signs were always there," Tracy said softly. "We just never thought it would come to this." In her NBC interview, Tracy's words didn't sound rehearsed or calculated. They sounded like pure heartbreak. The kind that leaves a person hollow. There are pains so deep you can't even scream. She said they just live inside you forever. To Tracy, Rob and Michelle Reiner weren't just her parents. They were her home. As the daughter Rob had adopted from his first marriage to Penny Marshall, Tracy said she never once felt different or less loved. Her father was her anchor. Not loud, not showy, but steady, and always there when she needed him. Her mother, Michelle, was the warmth that held the whole family together. Every childhood memory Tracy carries is soaked in that love. Family dinners, laughter echoing through their home. The feeling that no matter what happened, she was safe. They loved us with everything they had, she said. A statement that felt both like a confession and a thank you. For years, Rob and Michelle chose compassion even when it broke them. They chose patience even when hope ran thin. Tracy knows now that kind of love is the rarest kind, unconditional and everlasting. What hurts the most, she said, is losing the only people who understood her without her needing to explain a word. There are some losses you don't move past, she whispered. You just carry them forever. Her siblings, Jake and Romy Reiner, later released a joint statement that brought the entire entertainment world to tears. Words can't describe the pain we're living through. They wrote, losing our parents, Rob and Michelle, is something no one should ever experience. They weren't just our parents. They were our best friends. In the following lines, they didn't talk about anger or blame, only about love. They asked for privacy, for compassion, and for their parents to be remembered not for what happened, but for how they lived, for the kindness, laughter, and warmth they gave to everyone around them. Not long before it all happened, Roy had shared casual photos with their dad and simple moments that now feel priceless. For Tracy, each picture is a reminder that she truly was loved, that she grew up in a family that gave her everything, even when life itself felt too heavy to bear. Now, with the case still ongoing, the Reiner family faces a loss that no amount of time can fix. Tracy said it best. This was a tragedy written long before it happened. We just didn't understand the warning signs until it was too late. If you have any thoughts, theories, or reflections about this story, drop them in the comments. Let's talk about it together. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. See you in the next one.